Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation about styling in controls. My name is Gustavsen and I'm a principal engineer at the Qt company. I'm currently on the UI team, which means that I'm mainly working in Qt Quick controls, but also widgets, which I happen to be the maintainer of. And today I'll show you the different ways that you can style an application with perhaps a little emphasis on desktop. I'll start by saying a couple of words about the status of the built-in styles that we have in Qt today. In Qt 5, we bundle 5 different styles: the default style, Fusion, Material, Universal, and Imagine. Among those, Fusion is the only one that is really meant to be used on desktop. The other ones are written with touch in mind, which means that the controls tend to look a bit too large if that is not the case. But most importantly, in Qt 5, we don't have any native desktop styles. So to close that gap in Qt 6, we are now putting more resources into bringing Controls 2 up to a comparable level to widgets for creating desktop applications as well. This is a long-term strategy and it will take some time to complete. But we started the work and in Qt 6.0 we added 2 new native desktop styles, which is the macOS style and the Windows style. At the same time, we changed which style an application runs with by default. Now it will use the style that is native or otherwise most at home on the platform it runs. So on macOS, it will use the macOS style, and on Windows, the Windows style, and so forth. And this is in contrast with Qt 5, which will always choose the default style unless you explicitly specify something else. And because of this change, we found the name default style to be somewhat misleading and confusing. It's no longer the style that gets chosen by default on any platform, actually. It has therefore been renamed to Basic Style in Qt 6. There are many ways of setting a style in Controls 2, depending on how flexible you want your application to be. I have listed most of them here. You can go all the way from hard coding the style in your main function by using this set style call, to providing a configuration file that lets you set individual properties per style. But all those ways have in common that the style is chosen at runtime. And this actually has a performance penalty in the QML engine. But with Qt 6, there is a new way that lets you specify a style already at compile time. And I'll quickly jump into Qt Creator and show you how you can activate that path. After the registration system for QML types was revamped in Qt 5.15, it also paved the way for a new QML ahead of time compiler, which will soon be ready for tech preview. And this compiler is able to bind the controls that you use in your application, like the spin box here, directly to the style. And to enable that, you simply need to skip importing Qt controls and instead import the specific style that you're going to use directly. So if you, for example, know that your application will always use the Fusion style, you should import Qt controls Fusion directly like this, rather than the more general Qt quick controls that stood from before. Because when you do the latter, you actually import a thin QML module that has only one responsibility, and that is to resolve which of the other styles to use at runtime. It does so by, for example, inspecting the command line. And then it will bind that style lazily to the controls in the application. And this is an extra layer in direction, and it will also stop the QML compiler from optimizing your code already at compile time. Because of this new ahead of time compilation support, all styles in Controls 2 now need to be proper QML modules. This is a change from Qt 5, where a style could practically be inside any folder on your file system. As a consequence, the functions listed here are therefore removed from Qt 6. This API was basically just giving you different ways of telling controls where to search for style. Especially add style path is no longer needed, since a style will simply use the QML engine's import path instead. So in a way, the API is now easier, since there are no special cases for implementing a style versus implementing any other QML modules. So after talking about the changes that we have done from Qt 5 to Qt 6, let's move over to the more fun stuff. And that is how to actually customize and style your controls. Changing the style of a single control in QML is both easy and fun. almost every control consists of a background delegate and a content item delegate that you can change. And sometimes there can be other delegates as well, for example, for setting the up and down indicators of a spin box. So I'll demonstrate how easy it is to do exactly that, customize the spin box, and I'll continue on the same example I showed on the previous slide, but I'll quickly just revert the changes that I made. So we start from scratch, this, and I also set from the command line that we should use the basic style for this. So the application is very simple. You have an application window, a column, and inside there you have a spin box. So let's just run it and see how it looks. This is a normal spin box. So let's say now that I want to change the background here behind the number 7 in this case. And that is quite easy actually. We can just, as I said, every control has a background delegate. So I set a new background like this. And I can do something wrong immediately. I can set the width to be 150 and the height to be 20. And I can say that the border color should be green. And if I start this now, you will see that the background is not aligned with the rest of the control. It's simply too big. And the reason for that is that we have actually hard-coded the width and height to be certain size. And you shouldn't do that because the size of the control is decided up here where you set a size of the control. Let's say I set the size to be 300, for example. You will see that the spin box itself will resize, but the background stays the same. So the correct way of setting in width and height of the background is to use implicit width and implicit height, like this. Implicit width and implicit height will be used by the control as a hint to how big the control should be unless you don't set a size. But as soon as you set a size on the control, the control itself will then resize both the background and the content item and every of the other delegates inside it to match up. So if I start it now, you can see that the background has been resized to something else than the implicit width and implicit height. But it still doesn't look so good because you can see that the background is actually behind the up and down indicators, and I don't want that. I want the background to actually end here and end here. And so how do you do that? I'll quickly show you an illustration that I stole from the documentation. And this one shows how a control is actually laid out. So you have the content item in the center and you have the background item behind it. And if you want to move the content item around on the background, move it somewhere else, you would use the padding, left padding, bottom padding, top and right padding, and so forth. And if you want to move the background, then you should use the insets. So in my case, I want to move the background. Let's look at example again. I want to move the background a little bit in. It shouldn't start here, it should start here. So I can just simply say left inset should be 50 and the same on the other side. Right inset should also be 50. So here you go. Now you move the background. And I can also continue because I want to change the indicators as well and have cheat a little bit by creating a rounded indicator below here. It's nothing magical going on. It's just a rectangle with a certain width and a height and a color and the radius and the text. So the way you do that is to have something called up indicator, and it should be rounded indicator like this, and it should have the text plus. And if I quickly start this one, you will see that the indicator is placed all the way here to the left. I want it to stay here on the right hand side. So just quickly say that it should be on the parent width minus my own width. Now it's correctly placed here. And I can also set the other indicator while I'm on it. Down indicator, be rounded. Oops. Indicator. And the text should be negative minus. And in this case, I don't need to set an X because it should be all the way to the left here. So far, so good. But if I create another spin box up here, you will of course see that this spin box is still using the basic style, and only this other spin box will use my customization, which is obviously because I only customize this spin box. So it might be the case that you want to use this new customized spin box for all your spin boxes in your application. And the easiest way to do that is to just simply convert it into a separate control. So you can just go and add a new file, email file, and I'll call this my spin box like this. All right, you can add it to Git. And then I'm simply going to copy the spin box in here. And I also need to import controls. And now I can simply just use my spin box this way. Oops, little compilation error. Let's see what it says. Rounded indicator is not the type. Yeah, I should copy this rounded indicator in here as well, which even looks better. And here we go. But there are some caveats here actually that I need to talk about. And okay, so let's say that we don't want this custom background rectangle. We want to use the original rectangle that the basic style is using, which still looks kind of okay. It has a different color. And now we think, okay, this control looks good. I'm done with it, and I can ship my application. The problem is now that the user can go onto the command line and actually set a different style here. Let's say it chooses Fusion, for example. And if you run this example now, you will see that now it's using the background from the Fusion style, which is not what we intended. So it's actually very important when you customize your controls that you are specific about which style you're customizing on top of. And in my case, I was customizing on top of the basic style, so I really need to set the basic style here. So the spin box will always be customized on top of basic style. Now it looks the way I wanted it to look. And I can still like create a new, or like this. I can still use the Fusion spin box now if I want to, or I can use my customized one. So this is really important as the different styles can use different background delegates, different content item delegates, but also different insets and different padding. So unless you're really specific about which style you're basing it on top of, it will typically look wrong, and especially in Qt 6, because in Qt 6 now the style might change from depending on which platform you run on. So if you base this on top of the Mac OS style, for example, and you move to Windows, then the style will change and it will look all wrong. But that actually also brings me to another just as important point. And that is, let's say you were to actually customize this on top of the Mac OS style instead. And we run it again. And now you will see that this actually looks wrong. First of all, it doesn't, the focus rectangle is wrong. There is no value showing here. And you can even see the indicators up here in the corner. And the reason for this is that the native styles uses the native drawing APIs for drawing the controls, and sometimes you cannot divide or split up a control to be drawn in different parts, like drawing the indicators separately or drawing the indicators separately from the background and so forth. Sometimes you need to draw the whole control onto one single image. And because of that, you cannot actually customize a control on top of a native style, because it will be really shaky and it will not look the way you would expect. So for that reason, we have come to the conclusion that you should never customize your own control on top of a native style. Either you want the native look and feel, and you can use the native style for a certain control, or you want to have a customized control that looks different, and then you should customize it on top of some of the cross-platform styles that we have in Qt today. So this is perhaps sadly, but a limitation that we have in controls today. You should not customize on top of the native styles. For the remaining part of this presentation, I'll show you how we can create a new style from scratch. Customizing existing controls, like we did in the previous slides, has the downside that you actually hard code your application to use those customized controls. There is no way for the user to change from the command line, for example, which style to use that will actually affect those controls. So if you instead plan to bundle several different styles with your application, like a light and dark mode, or if you simply just want to let the users choose a different style from the command line, you are better off creating a new style from the ground up. But in order for you to do so, there is a couple of things you should know about how a control is actually implemented. Every control basically consists of two parts, one written in C++ here on the top, and one written in QML here at the bottom. The idea is that all the logic of a control is written in C++ in something called a template. And to avoid any confusion early on, these are not C++ templates, but just normal C++ classes. They are named templates because they are the base classes that all the styles inherit from. A template itself contains only the logic of a control and no graphics. It therefore cannot be used standalone by an application. It needs to be subclassed from QML to provide the missing pieces, like delegates and animations. And when creating a style, you only implement those QML files. The templates themselves are already provided by Qt. This illustration shows how a spinbox is implemented. The template contains properties like to and from, which describe the range of valid values you can take. And it also implements any logic related to those properties, like ensuring that the value properties always contain within that range. So a template contains the whole API of the spinbox and all the logic that goes with it. And at the bottom here are all the QML subclasses. We have one for each style. So the spinbox in the basic style inherits from this template, the same with the material style spinbox, and also for Mac OS. And they take care of how a spinbox should look in the respective styles. They contain delegates and animations with insets and padding and so forth, but they contain no spinbox logic. And this is really important. They should contain no JavaScript code that modifies how the control works. Because when you use QML to write a style, you can add more properties and logic directly to the QML files if you want to. I mean, it's JavaScript after all. The problem is that those properties will only be available when using that specific style. And as soon as an application runs with a different style, they will be missing. So you should take care so that you don't expose new API in the QML files on purpose or by accident. So let's go back to the code again and see what we can do to actually convert my spinbox into become a part of a new style instead, a new style that I will call fluffy. So the first thing I would do to do that is to jump into command line. This is where my project is, and I'll create a new folder called the name of my style, which will be fluffy. And then I'll move my spinbox to be in there instead, and this time I'll just call it spinbox because now it's the proper spinbox. Sorry, I need to, of course, move the spinbox into fluffy spinbox. Then I go in here and creator will, of course, complain a little bit now. I also have to go into my resource file and say that Spinbox has now been renamed and is now inside fluffy Spinbox like this. Now I can open it again. The second thing I want to do is to revert some of the stuff I did on the previous from the previous slides. First of all, I no longer want to have this import where I import macOS or Fusion or anything else, because I no longer depend on those styles. Instead, I depend on the templates that I was talking about, like this. And it's also a standard, at least in controls, to import templates as T, like this way. And then we say t.spinbox to sort of make it very clear that the spinbox we're talking about is the spinbox in templates and not this spinbox that we're actually coding on right now. The next thing we should do is, since this will now be a proper module, we need a qmelder file inside the floppy folder. So we can go ahead and do that. Add a new empty file, which we call qmelder, like this. And the qmelder file will basically describe this module. So the first thing we should do is to say what the module is called. And it should be called fluffy, like this. And it also needs to specify which controls we actually export. And in our case, we only export one control, and that is the Spinbox, version 6.0 in this case. And the Spinbox can be found in the spinbox.qml. Now, since this style will only actually offer one single control, we need to tell which other style we should use to actually resolve all the other controls, because the application will use buttons and sliders and whatnot. So we need to tell it what the fallback style should be. And the way we do that is to actually import git quick controls and the name of the style that we want to fall back to, which in my case will be Fusion. And I need to put auto here in the end. So that's it. And then there's a little detail here, because I'm using QMake now for generating this project. But if you use CMake, we actually have a new CMake API in Qt 6.2 that will actually generate this QML file for you. So I can just quickly show you here. The new CMake function is Qt add QML module. And if you used it from CMake, this QML file will actually be generated automatically for you, so you don't have to do it. And if you want to know more about how this new CMake API works, I pasted the URL to the blog below here that you can read for more information. But I'm sticking with QMake for now, so I need to generate this file manually, like this. The next I need to do is to actually tell my application that it should look for modules also inside this project. Because by default, the engine does not contain a URL import path that points to my own directory. So I need to say engine.add import path, and then I can write QRC because it's inside my resources, like this. And finally, I need to go to my project here and say that from the command line argument, I want to use the fluffy style. So now let's run it and see if I typed everything correctly. No, then let's see what the error was. Oh yeah, my spinbox is not a type, because now there is actually no my spinbox anymore. I removed those. Now we can type spinbox directly. And here we go. Now it chooses the spinbox, but as you can see, it looks really, really wrong for some reason. And the reason is that inside my spinbox, it no longer inherits from a certain style, like the Fusion style or the basic style. So it's missing a lot of pieces for this to become a complete control. And first and foremost, it's missing the background delegate and also the content item delegate. So we need to add those back real quick. So I said background, rectangle, and we set the implicit width to be 150. height to be 20 and border color to be green. And we also do this for the content items. And then we can have text to actually show what the value is. And for this, I need to do a little trick. I set the ID here up to be control. Oops. Just auto completion for you. Control. And then I can say here that the text should be control.value. I think it should show in the spin box. So now let's look at it. Still doesn't look very good. And the reason for that is that my spin box main here in main does not really have a size. I can remove one of them. So if I set a different size, for example, width to be 150, height to be 40, it looks slightly better at least. So this is the first thing that we need to do. We need to give it a, well, yeah, I'm even overriding width here, which is really well. So we set implicit width to be 50, implicit height to be 40, for example. So now the size looks better at least. But I'm still not seeing the indicators. And the reason is that now I actually added a content item here, and I want the content item to also be pushed in from the sides, like I do with the padding on the back or the insets of the background. So I need to set left padding to be the same and right padding to be the same as the insets. And now it starts to look better. And I should probably also, in my text here, anchors center in parent. So here we go. Now we have a customized spin box. And now we can go, of course, go here to the project again and say that you want to run this with the Fusion style if you want to. And we have the Fusion style, or go back and say that you want the floppy style. There's actually one more thing I want to say about this control file here, and that is that you should actually never use any IDs. You should never go in here and say ID my background, for example. And the reason why I shouldn't do that is because if the delegates have an ID, there is no way for the QML engine and the control to avoid creating this rectangle, because you never know who else is actually referencing this rectangle from within this file or from the outside. Because the control will actually try to optimize and not create this background in case the application set a customized background from the outside. So if you skip setting an ID, the runtime engine will actually understand that this rectangle, this background, will not be referenced from anywhere, so we can just skip creating it on startup in case your application is creating a custom rectangle from the outside. So that's a rule of thumb in your style implementation. Never use any IDs other than the one on the top here. And in our CI systems, we actually check for this for our own internal styles to ensure that the style is loaded quickly and without spending too much memory and resources that goes unused. Okay, that was all I had time for, actually. Time passes fast. I hope this presentation gave you a little more insight into how you can style your controls, together with some do's and don'ts. And I'll hang out in the chat for a little bit longer in case any of you has any questions related to anything that I have been talking about. Thank you very much for attending the presentation.